He's not gonna be. Okay, the boss over here says it's time to get going and, you know, Jennifer is our boss, so, we do have a quorum today. Councilman Laybourne is on Zoom. Councilman Seagrave is here. I'm assuming Dr. Rennie will be here. We haven't heard that he's not. And we'll go ahead and get started with the December 20th. This is the last one of the year, correct? Last Public Services Committee of the year, December 20th, 2022. Public Service Committee meeting. Most of you attend all these, so you know how this works. Please, if you would, if you are online, if you'd be kind enough just to mute yourself while you're not speaking. If you do have a phone or a device, please shut it off or mute it if you're able to while you're here. If you do plan to speak today, obviously identify who you are for the record. And with that, Madam Clerk, item number 9.
Number 9, ordinance third reading, annexing to the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, land located west of Van Buren Avenue, north of Del Range Boulevard.
And Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Ward. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This proposal proposes annexing about a half acre of land located near Van Buren Avenue and Del Range Boulevard. This is part of a county pocket, and it is contiguous to the city on the north. It would anticipate annexing a privately owned parcel along with the adjacent right of way. The governing body's already heard this item, and there are no changes proposed. So if there's any questions, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I appreciate that. Any questions either here in the room or online from Councilman Laybourne?
See any hands raised?
Tom, any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Appreciate that. Is there a developer's report or a representative that would like to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm a member of the Public Service Committee, Brandon Swain.
And I went ahead and circulated those. to Tom, too. I don't believe Mr. Laybourne would have seen them. though.
Okay. So I just want to make myself available for any questions. I'll kind of wait for sales picture with that. Zone change that we just next time. All right.
That sounds good. Thank you. Let the record show that Dr. Rennie has arrived. First item. Just so when you get settled, we're on item 9. Okay. Further public comment here in the room. Out online, Jennifer, do we have any hands raised?
Sure don't have hands raised.
Okay, well, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion. So moved. We have a motion. Do we have a second on item number 9? Second. We have a motion and a second on this ordinance on third reading. Any further questions or comments from the committee? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Kind of behind the curve here since I just got here. We're on the Van Buren one. Yeah.
Yes, we are on item number 9.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that one. Did we lose Mr. Laybourne?
Councilman Laybourne, please don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yes, I vote aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate that. We do have a quorum here in the room, though, in case we have some technical difficulties, but thank you for being here. All right, well, that said, the recommendation next Tuesday night will be for approval of this ordinance on third reading. Item 10, please, Madam.
Number 10, third reading, amending the official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from county A agricultural residential to NR3 neighborhood residential high density for land located west of Van Buren Avenue and Del Range.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Boyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This zone change application is to give it a zoning assignment to the land we're annexing as the previous item on the agenda. The proposed zone by the applicant is NR3, which would allow high density residential development. The staff recommendation and planning commission recommendation on this item are both to approve. Item has been heard by the full council previously and nothing is changing on this application, but I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Appreciate that. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd on this proposed zone change on third reading?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
in the 2 week interim, have had any comments, concerns with the density?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any other comments that we've received since the last meeting.
Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Seagrave? Mr. Laybourne, did you have any questions or comments on, we're on item number 10.
No, I don't. I think I understand all of this. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Brandon, did you have anything further you wanted to say?
Brief, so you guys see the visual before you, Mr. Laybourne, I apologize, I don't have these visual. However, I just wanted to provide a little bit of context to kind of how these projects can end up. So we're anticipating rear load garages for these, so if garages aren't in the front, we're in the back, which will free up the front facade to allow quite a bit of creativity. So this is not a rendering that's been made specific to the site. However, this is exactly what we're intending for that Van Buren project. There's going to be some overlap on the next agenda item regarding the zoning and the zoning allowing a cottage lot orientation. So I was trying to think of similar projects in Cheyenne that have taken advantage of that exemption. I'm not affiliated with this project at all, but one good example is the Faith Drive Townhomes in the Point near the intersection of Gardenia and Faith Drive. Those have a common rear loaded garages. There's 20 units on there with interior units having a common courtyard. The interior units also don't front any street frontage. So again, this isn't my project, but it gives you an idea of what possibilities for that cottage lot exemption will allow. So I don't know if it's necessarily applicable to this agenda item, but perhaps for next. So I'm available for any additional questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Seagrave, please.
well, when you speak of, I've often wondered if I could ever get my truck in. So that's pretty tight.
Right.
Between the two buildings. I mean, I think I'd have to.
You could probably get no way. Mine is too long. I've tried it.
I drive by there, and I'm like, man, that's pretty tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have linked this year's and there's also height issues as well. My guess is these garages are probably 7 foot tall. So if you've got a truck that's taller, it's probably not considered that.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
Mr. Laybourne, did you have any questions or comments? Again, we're on number 10.
No,
Okay. Okay. Any further public comment from in the room or online? Any hands raised, Jennifer?
Don't see me.
All right, the chair would entertain a motion on item number 10.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor?
I,
Thank you, sir. Those opposed? Jennifer, the recommendation for next Tuesday night will be for approval of this ordinance on third reading. Next item, please.
Number 11, ordinance third reading, amending official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from LI light industrial to NR3 neighborhood residential high density for land located east of Warren Avenue and south of 4th Street.
It's Lloyd, isn't it?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Seth Lloyd with the Planning and Development Department. This proposal proposes changing the zoning classification from LI light industrial to NR3 for a area of the community located between Warren Avenue and House Avenue, between near 1st Street and 3rd Street. The proposal is to allow cottage lot development. The area that is currently zoned LI is vacant land and has never been developed, and residential zoning of some sort seems appropriate at this location, even though the existing zoning is LI and the future land use designation for the particular parcel is industrial. Surrounding future land use designations include the urban residential designation. This is an item on third reading, so it's already been through council. And there's been no changes in the application, but I am available for any questions. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any questions for Mr. Lloyd? Again, we're on item number 11. This ordinance on third reading.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Seager.
any additional comments? Originally, we had our neighbors' comments. Anything in the last 2 weeks?
Mr. Chair, the neighbors made comments after the last committee meeting, but prior to the council meeting. That comment was addressed via a memo from our city engineer. But I have not received any other comments since that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Dr. Lee.
Mr. Lloyd, can you give me, Mr. Lloyd, through you, sorry, give us an idea of with that currently being permitted light industrial? What would be eligible to be cited there located?
Mr. Chair, through you, the general idea of the light industrial zone would be to have lighter industrial uses, small machine shops, manufacturing small things, maybe storage, not so much the full-on commercial warehouse, but a smaller warehouse that stores some things for a local business type operation. There is some businesses already in that area that kind of exemplify light industrial type uses. So that could be, those could be uses that could be used for this site. I would note that this site hasn't been developed with any of those uses, so it might not be the right shape, size, or location possibly.
No, Mr. Chairman, where I'm going, I mean, just sitting here thinking, I mean, I have some reservations about this project. But that's why I was sitting thinking, well, if I live next to that, would I rather have something that fits in the light industrial zone, or would I rather have a multifamily? So perhaps between now and the weekend, can you send me a list of what's permitted in that area and what could be conditional?
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Yes, I'll send a list to you, Councilman Green, about what the specific uses are allowed in the LI zone, what specific uses are allowed in here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Mr. Laybourne, we're on item number 11. Did you have any questions or comments for Mr. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some comments. I believe that, well, I guess my question, Mr. Lloyd, would be, since I do have one, the 16-foot alley coming off onto Warren Avenue is a very unique approach in my mind to this large of a development. What are our options there in terms of making it certainly larger and getting some analysis of that truck route traffic down Warren Avenue and how that might affect these people who live here?
Mr. Chair, through you, when looking at the Warren Avenue, the city engineer noted that Warren Avenue doesn't have a large traffic count at the moment, so it's not really anticipated to have too major of an effect on this development, or this development will have too major of an effect on Warren Avenue. The plan is to widen the access where the 16-foot wide alley is located. That access would be widened to meet cottage lot regulations, which would be over 20 feet wide for an access. And then the engineering department has indicated they'd like to do a flared access to that location, so it doesn't appear as a street. It looks more like a driveway. Kind of like you would be going into maybe more of a commercial parking lot or something like that. That type of driveway, as opposed to looking like a street. It would not be the anticipation to make that 16-foot wide alley into a through street, but it would provide a wider access for the people who live in this location. And the residents to the north of that alley could still access that alley and utilize it for a detached garage if they so desired. Does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, yes, I would follow up, Mr. Chairman, and that is.
Go ahead.
Who would pay for this improvement in the alley? Would the developer pay for the whole improvement?
Mr. Chair, it is my understanding that the proposal for the project and the understanding between the city engineer and the applicant is that the applicant developer would build that alley up to that's paved standard and then be responsible for maintaining it because it's basically serving as a driveway to this development. Similar to as a commercial parking lot has to be maintained by that commercial property owner.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lloyd. Developers report.
Good afternoon. I appreciate your questions with me. Wanted to answer a couple of questions. I'm not sure of all the uses for light industrial, but I do know that one use by right is outdoor storage. Regarding the access, Mr. Laybourne, if the project is ultimately approved, I'm required to have a minimum of a 28 feet access. So the alley at a minimum would be widened from 16 to 28 feet. As a developer in good conscience, I would have to pave it and improve it. And Seth is right. The expectation from day one with the city has been that I'll make those improvements. There's also proposed additional right of way added to add a pedestrian connection from Warren Avenue to House Avenue as well. So residents in my project as well as existing residents will be able to utilize that. I think those are the only comments I wanted to make. I'm available for any other questions.
Questions for the developer from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm still trying to catch up here. So the, for Mr. Swain, so the diagram of the cottage lots here is in reference to this project.
Correct. So the reason why I drove the lot, the red line down the middle is if you look at the top half, that's essentially the barrier.
Okay.
However, with these units with the total of 20, which is what also reflects the proposed plat, essentially deeming it serves as the alley, and we could tilt this and kind of get a sense of how a project like that could work. Because I do understand that initially it sounds like it's perhaps irresponsible, but having some experience with these, it's kind of like a game of Tetris. You just get used to certain dimensions and certain ones fit. And again, this is my second stab at this project. I did have a pre-app meeting January of 2021 with a different idea. I came back to the city with the proposal of improving that alley as right of way. That was a great opportunity to solve, kind of this site, which I believe has been listed for several years. So I believe it's been an opportunity for everybody. I just think that my idea in particular in this time could be a great fit. And it'll allow for affordable product given at its higher density.
Okay, and so you're looking at essentially so you're looking at 10 units total?
So
Or how many,
So-
that's what I was trying to find. in
Oh,
there.
sure.
How many units?
sure, no
total?
problem. So it would be the same density as this project. So the plat
So
is
20.
proposed as 20.
Okay,
Correct. And I think if we measured these dimensions, they're probably going to be very, very similar to the site. Again, this isn't my project, but these
Yeah,
cottage
I
lot
understand.
projects with the rear load garages that are stacked like this, they tend to be very, very similar. And the interior facing units will have a common landscape courtyard. So units are either facing the street or landscape courtyard. None are facing garages. And I'm hoping over the alleyways or garages where it's a good opportunity to canopy balconies. We do have some experience with that. Open space could be a challenge.
Sure.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, I appreciate the questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just one follow-up. I believe I heard Mr. Lloyd say that the developer would be responsible for maintenance of the drive-through.
Yes.
Is that through an HOA or how do you see that working?
So I imagine it's ultimately gonna have to be through an HOA. I may be paraphrasing here, but I think it's even a requirement in my final plat, if I have common space in the project, which I will, because this is a cottage lot, but I've got to have some type of maintenance agreement or HOA in place. So certainly for the landscaping, plowing, all that. I do have another project. I haven't yet developed it, But it does utilize city alley. I have a maintenance agreement in place with that. City, although it's platted as city alley, the expectation is for the developer to pay that. To maintain it.
I was just concerned that with 20 individual owners, if you don't have a HOA,
Right.
how would you get 20 people?
Right.
Contribute
Correct.
towards maintenance.
Correct, and you know, we're learning by trial and error. We got some things right with the 27th Street Hills HOA. We got some things wrong like cost. I mean, you can't anticipate how high costs are gonna go up, so perhaps the next HOA will have a better rider to account for that. But these are problems that have to be solved.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee for the developer?
The mayor. just have his hand raised.
Do we have any further public comment? Public comment from here in the room? All right. No hands raised?
No, I-
All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve for the sake of discussion.
Second.
Further questions, comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I think this is interesting and important issue to be attempting to develop, and I certainly do recognize that the developer has come to us with some projects that meet the intent that we laid out in our UDC. And certainly this piece of property is challenged in many ways. I hope I can review this matter on the ground shortly, but I'm going to be a no vote because of my concern with the traffic on Warren Avenue, the extension of the alley and its maintenance, and the fact that, and I understand this, that of course the developer has to have that density to make it profitable, but at the same time, there seems like an awful lot of density right there, and of course my concerns with traffic stand, but it's not that this isn't something that this undeveloped land it would definitely be a benefit to the neighborhood and to the south side, and certainly being there next to the Greenway would be an advantage, I think. But I'm going to have to vote no today. I don't think we've resolved these issues, and when, of course, we make this zone change, we're locking in some uses by right. I'm not sure that we should. So those are my comments. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I have one more question for the developer, if I may. And that goes back kind of a follow-up to Mr. Seeger's question about the HOA. How long is the HOA on 27th Street been in existence?
If I may also get back. I believe we got the CEO on the projects at the beginning of either 2018 or 2019. So it would be around that same.
I just, thank you. Again, kind of, I think I'm echoing my colleague's concern. I can think of, yours is maybe the second AOA then, that's maybe still functioning. Those have been in existence for a little while and then they dissolve themselves and obviously that's a situation where the city's not going to take over.
Yeah, these are, I sell real estate, so I should be better prepared to describe this, but there's going to be a lot of restrictions here, and when you develop these projects with hundreds of thousands and to pavement, extending water and sewer, a lot of these services will be under that common driveway. It's frankly you're responsible as a developer to set up an HOA in anticipation that it's going to be dissolved. And really, these projects, the upkeep of them, the common maintenance of the facade, is everything on the look. So I could do a great job on these, sell it, and just have the neighborhood not maintain it.
Mhm.
And then it's gonna reflect on me as a developer, which I don't want as well. So my intent, as much as I can legally do, is to bulletproof the HOA as much as we can. We haven't had any discussions of it being dissolved at 27-3 just because it's too critical. They all said, share that common driveway and any type of maintenance on that, it would be a nightmare without that place. So
Right.
it also forces insurance on the dwelling as well. We have it set up to where they pay into the HOA for the insurance policy. So that's kind of another way to ensure that they're on the hook that they can't maintain a mortgage without
Right.
having insurance. So
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, because I was gonna make some comments, but I think you probably know what I'm gonna say, so go ahead.
I mean, today we're talking about the zoning. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot more work to do, but I believe you attach the HOA to a deed as
Correct.
well, which makes it more difficult to dissolve because be 20 deeds involved.
Yeah.
So I think there are some ways around it today that maybe there weren't years ago. But certainly this kind of a project, as you indicate, the outside maintenance, the insurance, snow removal, etc. It's gonna have to be a strong HOA. But again, I think that for me anyway, that's down the road as you move forward with your project today, just so
correct.
thank you.
Yeah, it's always been kind of off track.
Well, somewhat relevant. Did you have comments when?
Chair Charles Sloan, Planning and Development Director. I just wanted to add a couple of things real quick. There have been some discussions about the maintenance issue and commonly what we've seen in some developments are the invited interest lot, where everyone has a proportionate share of that lot, which keeps under their responsibility, which might be something you could utilize to lock it in. And I just wanted to clarify for everyone, sort of the context of this development. This is an industrial zone parcel that is just to the north of the creek, in the area on the north and east. It is surrounded by residential development. And any of the industrial development in that area is on the south side of 3rd Street. On the southwest corner of 3rd and Evans, there is what's tagged on Google Maps as a rental company. A large fence that you can't see through. That really is keeping that access into that industrial area to the south and to the east. So I would believe that zoning that is not industrial, this location would likely be more in character with that neighborhood. And also a representative of that division you have that's formed by the creek. Now, there is one minor concern. Warren Avenue, it is a street that is used for access for a variety of truck traffic from this area to the south. But those will all be items at the specific site plan proposal to make sure that the necessary site vision triangles are in place and any potential or conflict is. So I just wanted to share that with the context of it.
Any questions for Mr. Bloom or additional questions for the developers? Okay, thank you.
Charles, when we're done, I have some questions for you after the.
All right, so we have motion and a second, Madam Clerk, I believe, just to keep us back on track. Any further questions, comments from the committee? All right, all those in favor? Those opposed?
No,
All right, the recommendation for next Tuesday night will be for approval on 3rd reading. Next item, please.
Ordinance 2nd reading, annexing to the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, land located south of Atlantic Drive in the east of Taft Avenue.
Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. The proposal in front of you proposes annexing some city-owned land south of Atlantic Drive and east of Taft Avenue. In state statute, the city can annex any land that it is sole owner of without a public hearing and with that being the only criteria. And since the city owns this land, we can annex it. So staff recommends approval of this application. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Sounds like you have a pretty good grasp of this one, Mr. Lloyd, but I'll go ahead and ask if you have any questions. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd? And there is no developer, so. All right, if there's no questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd, the chair would entertain a motion,
Can I ask for one?
I guess, if you want. Go ahead.
There is.
Jennifer wanted to know if everybody wanted to say anything, but thank you for the reminder. Any public comment regardless, regarding this item? You'd think after a year, I would remember that all the time. No raised hands either. Thank you for the reminder. I do appreciate that. All right, seeing and hearing no public comment, the chair would entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second on item number 12, ordinance on second reading. Any further questions or comments from the committee? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation for next Tuesday's city council meeting will be for approval on second reading. Next item, please.
Number 13, ordinance second reading, amending the official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from county HI heavy industrial and county A2 agricultural to MR medium density residential for land located south of Atlantic Drive and east of Tappan.
Mr. Lloyd, we meet again.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, once again, for the record, Seth Lloyd with the Planning and Development Department. The proposed zone change in front of you is to assign a city zone to the land we're annexing. Adjacent zone to the north and east is MR medium density residential, therefore the proposed zoning for this parcel is MR also. The existing county zoning of HI would not be appropriate for this location, and there is no equivalent city zone to the A2 zone, although AG might be as analogous as possible. However, we may as well assign one city zone to the entire parcel, so the proposal is MR zoning. Future land use map for the area is urban residential, so MR zoning would be appropriate for that as well. The proposal is to have it be utilized for city purposes. So P zoning could be possible, but the MR zoning also works here for development for the purposes of a greenway. So that's the reason for the proposal. The planning commission heard the item and recommended approval of the MR zone. Staff also recommends approval of the MR zone, and I'm available for any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Mr. Lloyd other than Dr. Rennie? Go ahead, Dr. Rennie.
I'll call him.
Go ahead, Dr. Rennie. I'm kidding. Please go ahead.
So, yeah, and you, Mr. Lloyd alluded to it, but my understanding is this is to provide access to the greenway so we can go east and eventually connect to
Correct.
So if it's a public use and we're not going to develop it, why not do it as a P zone first part of it? In the second half, I see this is better. The second half of the question is, as far as the county assessor and clerk are concerned, it's an MR zone. We're going to pay county taxes on it as opposed to her piece.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my understanding is that we can still have exempt properties zoned non-P zoning. To answer that second question first, I guess. And then to answer the first question, there is a proposal to do a land swap with some land to immediately to the east. In fact, I think that was on the agenda earlier. And by zoning it P, that would make, yeah, to make it zoned P would make it difficult to accommodate that.
Correct. We'd have to
land
rezone
swap.
it.
We'd have to do another land zoning.
Got it.
Swap.
Okay.
Neither going to be a reason.
I know. I just-
Anything
Okay.
anything further? Anything further?
No, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. About from you, Pete.
I don't have any hands raised.
Thank you. Jeannie, did you have something you wanted to provide?
Happy to answer any questions.
Well, I just figured you might have additional comments. You
It's really
certainly
the-
have the floor if you
is-
want.
Is to accommodate that MOU that you guys just approved a couple weeks ago for the land exchange. And it won't affect the Greenway. that went through.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, same thing. There is no developer report on this. Any further public comment, either in the room or online?
I do not see any hands raised.
The chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and second, item number 13, this ordinance on second reading. Any further questions or comments from the committee? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation for this ordinance on second reading will be for approval next week. Next item, please.
Ordinance second reading, annexing to the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, land located south of Atlantic Drive, south of Sixth Street, east of College Drive.
You might as well just stick with it.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Floyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This proposal is once again to annex land owned by the city. Therefore, there was no public hearing on the item, and the only review criteria is that the city owns the land. Now I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd.
It's easy.
It sure does. Are there any questions for Mr. Lloyd? Okay. Thank you, sir. No developer, we are the developer. Any public comment from the room or online? Jennifer, any hands raised?
Don't see any.
Okay, the chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. Again, this is item number 14, an ordinance on second reading. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation at next Tuesday city council meeting for this ordinance on second reading will be for approval. Next item, please.
Number 15, ordinance second reading, amending the official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from county P public to P public for land located south of Sixth Street, east of College Drive.
Go ahead, sir.
Seth Lloyd with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. I think for the last time today. The
Yeah,
proposal.
never say never.
The proposal is to give a city zone to the land we're annexing. It is currently zoned P public in the county, and the proposal is to zone it P public in the city. Since it is owned by a public entity, the P zone is appropriate. Also, the future land use designation for this location is open space and parks, which suggests a P zone as the optimal city zone. So it is encouraged by both future land use map and by the existing current zoning. P zone is compatible with the neighborhood. Generally, the P zone is intended to integrate with various neighborhoods. And the proposal here is to leave this area as detention, but also improve it with a greenway. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any questions? I think this provides some explanation to what we were talking about earlier. Any questions for Mr. Lloyd? And any hands raised from Pete? Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any further public comment, either here in the room or online? Okay. The chair would entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
second,
He's delayed.
Take your pick, Clayton.
I gave one to you and one to him.
That's fair. Okay, we have a motion and a second on this item number 15, which is an ordinance on second reading. Any further questions, comments from the committee? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation for this ordinance on second reading next week will be for approval. I believe that brings us to item 22.
Number 22, resolution authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to sign a final plat for Equipoise addition second filing, a replat of all of block 1, lots 1 and 2 inclusive. Equipoise addition, city of Cheyenne, County, Wyoming, located northwest of the intersection of Country Club Avenue and Snyder Ave.
Floor is yours, sir.
Chair, members of the committee, Connor White, Planning and Development Department. The plat before you is a final plat for Equipoise Edition second filing. It's just north of the intersection of Country Club Avenue and west of and adjacent to Snyder Avenue. The proposed plat is to replat 2 lots into 5 lots for some townhouse development. There is an existing multifamily building on lot 1. The lots, the other 4 lots, they did receive conditional use approval from the Board of Adjustment for our smallest lot size, which is the 83 lot. As these lots are also zoned NR2. All lots are buildable lots. The lots, lot 1 does not meet the lot size requirement for density for multifamily, but the applicant has submitted an administrative adjustment to reduce that a little bit. Staff believes that with the easements that are proposed, lot 1 will actually look bigger and function a little bit larger than what is being platted due to the easements. So staff does support that administrative adjustment to reduce the size that is required for the density that is currently there. Plat was heard at the December 5th Planning Commission meeting. And Planning Commission recommended approval of the final plat. Staff also recommends approval of this final plat. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. White. Appreciate that. Any questions from the committee for Mr. White?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm always sensitive to multifamily, single family environment. Have we had any issues at all with neighbors expressing concern?
Mr. Chair, could you,
Go
there
ahead.
hasn't been any concern with the proposed development. There was a lot of concern when variances were requested and things of that nature. Now this is townhouse development, which I guess you could consider multifamily, but each townhouse will be on its own individual lot, can be sold off individually. The existing multifamily that is there on lot 1, it's already existing. It's 11 units. That's not changing. So this is mostly to basically plat those additional 4 lots for the townhouses. But there hasn't been any comments that have been made about necessarily the development proposal for townhouses there. A lot of it was more for variants that were requested at the time that were also tolerated, but there was nothing really for the actual development itself.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Dr. Rennie.
for Mr. White, what was the variance that was requested?
So some of the variances requested were for front-loaded garages on lots 2 and 3. And then some setback variances at the beginning. So actually I'll change back to flat, but it actually shows their current proposal, which has everything being rear loaded. But there was a variance for lot 2 and 3 to have front loaded in the NR2 zone, and specifically for townhouses and the size of the lots, we don't allow front loaded garages. Everything is to be rear loaded. So those variances to have front loaded onto Snyder were denied by the Board of Adjustment.
And what was? And so the multifamily is 11 units and it is now slightly too small.
It is too small, I believe, by roughly 500 square feet for the lot. So it's just under what we would normally require for the lot size for the 11 units. But again, with the amount of easements that are on here that provide the access also to that multifamily back. If you add those easements into that lot size, it would be closer to the actual required size for that density.
And Mr. Chairman, then
Go ahead.
you have some garage space, you have 6 parking lots kind of on the northwest side. But essentially lots, the four townhomes, lots 2 through 5 are taking up what parking had been available for the apartments. I think if I remember sitting through this at planning commission, essentially, the question was, where do the people park that are living there? It was, well, there's ample on-street parking. So is that the solution? It's the people that are living in the apartments now will be parking on the street.
So, Mr. Chair, through you,
Go
so
ahead.
they would have the on-street parking. Currently with this development, it is a gravel parking lot in the back. Yes, it is large enough to where it probably can't support all those that live there. From going through this neighborhood, or even going by the development, most people are still parking on the street. But to answer your question, yes, it's basically turning into where there is that large parking area in the back. This is now going to be a paved parking lot. But this development does kind of shrink the number of on-site parking spaces, and then there's the provided on-street parking spaces.
Oh, sure.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just to follow that up, how many off-street spots do you think you'll end up with roughly?
There's 6 up in
So there is 1, 2. Looks like there is 8 proposed on-site parking spaces. One of those is a handicap space.
For 11 apartments?
Correct. Currently, it is a gravel and dirt park.
I can see why they might not want to park there. If it's gravel, dirt, but hopefully they would use those 8 spots. If it's paved. Thank you.
Anything further from the committee for Mr. White? Public, or excuse me, developer support.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee, Casey Palma, agent for the owner. I do have the owner and developer here today in case I can't answer any of the questions you have. We had discussed the lot size of lot 1 with staff, and that staff rule, the stipulation falls halfway between the townhomes and the existing apartments. I think there's sufficient area there for that circulation for the existing use. In regards to some of that discussion about the current parking area, the owner did bring some aerial photos that we had looked back to kind of research before, prior to his ownership, you know, how many people park back here. Obviously, he knows how many people tend to park there. Since he took ownership, originally this was approved with a conditional use permit in 2014 for that easterly portion to be a 6-plex. The owner felt like townhomes were more appropriate to the neighborhood and obviously a little less density, and having that fee simple ownership on those. If you look at the aerial photos or you drive by the site, basically what's proposed to be paved with this project is currently gravel. And everybody that parks in that back lot circulates in, it parks along the west boundary where we're showing the parking lot. And I don't think there's ever been a time that I saw more than 7 cars parked along that west property line. Yeah, you can see a little better on this exhibit, but the land where the townhome buildings are proposed is currently grass. I mean, nobody parks there now, so we're not taking away parking from the existing apartments. Really just improving it, paving it, adding curb and gutter, bringing it up to city standards. It's kind of terrible now, so. We have been through a few different iterations on this project to basically make sure it functioned best, both from the city engineer's perspective and the planning department's perspective with the rear loading. And we're pretty pleased with where it's at now. There are some calculations on that preliminary plat map for how we meet the parking, including the bicycle parking, transit access, and then what's proposed on site and adjacent to site. And that lot directly south of this project on Country Club Avenue. If you know this area at all, it's kind of a peninsula there. There's a huge amount of city right away there, but there's several hundred feet of Country Club Avenue that doesn't have anybody else parking on it. That unit accesses their lot through, I mean, they have a garage and an access point, not across from this continuous curb. So we've worked with the city engineer to make sure that they're satisfied with the amount of parking available and that there won't be any major conflicts or impediments to sort of how everything. Just kind of wanted to talk through some of that with you. It's been a long road. Trying to make something that worked here and that everybody, including the neighbors, were happy with. I think I've addressed any questions. Yeah.
Speaking of neighbors happy with, other than the initial application of the variance.
We have not. We had met with a couple neighbors early on in the process when we were requesting some variances. But as staff noted, since we reconfigured the project, eliminated all the variance requests, we haven't had any opposition. And really, those initial, sorry, Chair, through you, those initial resistance by the neighbors, they consistently said we're not against the project, we're just against the variances. And so having eliminated those, I think that the neighbors were much more comfortable with that.
Anything further for Mr. Palma from the committee?
I don't see anyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Further public comment? Familiar, sir, but you might want to just go ahead and identify
Well,
yourself.
my name is Seth Floyd. I live at 209 East Coast Avenue in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm wearing a hat as a resident and as a member of the Affordable Housing Task Force for this item. I do obviously work in the Planning and Development Department. I've seen you a lot at this table during this meeting, but in this case, I'd like to speak just a commentary with the Affordable Housing Task Force. One of the recommendations was to eliminate the density requirement, and I believe that will be coming through the planning department at some point. And so I don't think that you as a governing body or as a committee should really be overly concerned about this project maybe not meeting the letter of the law when it comes to that density requirement, especially if that might be going away in the near future. So I just wanted to make that comment and kind of maybe this is a real world test of that density requirement going away. And so you might have if you have reservations about that here, maybe we could have that discussion when that recommendation tries to be implemented later. So just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Further public comment?
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Pat Rudd. Project. Just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that I was available. If there were any other concerns, reservations that you have, I'd love to take an opportunity to address them if I could.
Any questions for the owner?
We have any questions, Mr. Chair? I'm pleased today with all of the infill projects we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think that's really. If the neighbors are comfortable, I mean, it's a little, well, 11 unit apartment complex there. This is really more challenging, probably
Right.
less challenging. So, but overall, I'm really pleased with all the infill projects we're seeing. Thank you.
Anything further? Any hands raised from Mr. Laybourne? Thank you. Further public comment? All right, the chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded from the committee. All right. Any further questions, comments from the committee? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, the recommendation for next Tuesday's city council meeting will be for this resolution to be adopted. Next item.
Number 23A, preliminary plat for the Maltese Cross, a subdivision of a portion of the west half of section 16 township 13 north, range 66 west of the 6 p.m. City of Cheyenne, Laramie County, Wyoming, located south of East College Drive and west of Sweetgrass Drive.
Chair and members of the committee, I would like planning and development department. The preliminary plat before you is for the Maltese Cross. This preliminary plat looks at platting 97.33 acres of land. And the uses that are kind of proposed for this plat would be a community park and then also a fire station. The plat also proposes missing connections of East Murray Road to create an east-west connection into and out of the Sweetgrass development. Does propose extending Loving Trail, formerly known as Avenue C, to make a north-south connection going further towards Bison Business Park. And then also looks to extend East Nation Road to make another east-west connection into and out of the subdivision as well. Staff would like to note that the plat does remove a proposed future right-of-way that was presented with past plats and other Sweetgrass documents. And this was going to be a connection from East Murray Road down to Sweetgrass Drive, just along what is depicted as bar C on this, which was Sweetgrass. So it's looking at basically platting that and making it more parkland to make a large community park. And then staff does believe that with the development of that park, there probably would be some sort of connection that will go from East Murray down to Sweetgrass Drive in some fashion. There is a connection from Sweetgrass First Filing, which is labeled as bar C, that would go into the park, so there would be a connection in there as well. But that would come with the development of. Staff recommended approval of the preliminary plat at the December 5th Planning Commission meeting, and Planning Commission did approve the preliminary plat with the following conditions. That number one, revise easement note A to identify it as an ingress, egress, and drainage easement for access and access to lot 2, I believe it's lot 1 and 4. And then number 2 is to show the drainage easements on lot 4. The drainage easements shall be sized in accordance with the final stormwater management plan for Sweetgrass development dated just January 7th, 2019, and should be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the committee for Mr. White?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I realize we're not looking at a plat at this point, but proposed fire station. What it's,
Yeah, it would be, basically it's at the corner, yep, so it's gonna be at the corner of Sweetgrass Drive and Sirocco, kind of where that intersection is, just across from it.
so how will they get in subdivision? I was thinking perhaps they'd use Avenue C.
So
They're gonna have to
currently
go
it
through,
will,
wouldn't
so currently, yes, it would be going through.
There's Sweetgrass up the road.
they? See, I think.
Yeah, so people can over. So this section, that's all parked, so coming in parcel stations actually on developments. So easier, coming straight south and out.
Siri.
This land's better suited for construction, based on some of our previous fire Matthews for the record, by the way. Some of the, as we've looked at the 3 current sites, the unbuildableness of some of the land that we've tried to work through, it's easier to stay on this parcel. It's flatter, easier to develop, we're gonna have less construction costs as we go forward.
And, Mr. Chair, through you, and I'd like to add in the interim, there is going to be a proposed, basically fire. Basically undeveloped, or completely undeveloped.
The secondary, as the development has grown, Mr. Chair, as the development has grown, there's required second access. So what we've worked with the developer on is an improved roadway that's providing that secondary access because we have more homes being served by just the single access. So temporary improved roadway to allow access.
So
Just seems like it'd be very difficult to get out of the neighborhood. Up to college to get.
So Mr. Chairman, to Mr. White or Chief Matthews. Because there was a lot of discussion with this planning commission, and is there like behind the homes on Goodnight, is there gonna be like an alley or a paved track along there? And the other option is, we haven't seen the development of the park, but then it would seem to make sense to bisect the park with some kind of road again to improve, get out and receive, because I agree, it doesn't make sense to have to go down the nation. Go all the way up, take Sweetgrass up to Murray or the college to get out of it.
Well, I understand that, but like you say, it's just we hired Matthews for the right.
Can't wait to go see it.
Well, no, I get where you're going, but as, like I say, as we talk about the developments of the parcels, buildableness of this site makes far more sense. And to the discussion, getting out back to college or going south, our developments continuing to go south. We're replotting 3 stations currently to better serve this area north and east of that goal.
But Mr. Chairman, if you're having to go through the neighborhood, what does that add to your response time compared to a couple of the locations that Councilman Seagrave is?
45 seconds.
A lot of kids, a lot of.
Right. Potential stops and starts.
I presume this fire station is going to serve the.
The intent is to serve, right, is to serve the current residential development and then continue to allow us to move south.
Again, I think if you could get out there and so.
Which we will, but yeah, we'll come across as Loving Trails continue to be developed nation. That opportunity will present itself as we continue. Out front now, securing the ability to get a station built.
Mr. Chair, through you, if I can add as well, and again, it goes with the development of the park. Because we don't know how the parks look yet, there could be those access park potentially that maybe we do have to create a larger width for that access to the park that will be able to cut further across. It just depends how that park ends up being developed.
Entry into the park.
Yeah.
And again, even for the park, it seems like you want access off Avenue C. I'm thinking of North Park and all the traffic on Saturday that goes in there. They've got a couple of entrances.
And being the park does sit, basically that park is going to sit between East Murray, Loving Trail, and then East Nation on the south. And then you've got Sweetgrass Drive all along the east. So it's got 4 different roads that we can provide access into the park off of. But again, that park will be developed at a later date. So it's hard to really say exactly where all of those accesses. But there is the potential to have them on any 4 of those streets. Better be.
Another question that's unrelated to the fire station, but that little section of East Murray, we didn't annex that one.
Mr. Chair, through you, so that wasn't platted when we did first filing.
The first file.
Yep, so it's being platted, they're basically platting the rest of East Murray out to what's currently Avenue C that will be a trail. Yep, so they're platting that, have that east-west connection finalized so that eventually it will be fully platted and built out and we'll have that full east-west connection. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Laybourne, did you have any questions or comments related to this item for Mr. White or Chief Matthews?
No, but I certainly appreciate the information that's been brought forward. It helps me understand the plat better. Thank you.
Absolutely. We just hadn't heard your voice in a while. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Thanks, guys. Any further public comment? Please.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee, Casey Caldwell, Following Planning Agency for the owner. So I don't really have a lot to add. I think you talked through it pretty well with staff. As you know, this project
goes out at least 50 years and a couple miles from this point. So, you know, there's a lot of long range planning that's going into this and figuring out what the best connections are, you know, both in the short term and the long term. As staff noted, there will be an emergency access road through bisecting the park out to Artesian in the meantime, but really the next leg of this development, if you've been out there at all, is that extension of Sweetgrass Drive connecting to Nation at the south end of this plat. And also that extending the existing Loving Trail, which was constructed over the last year, further north and making some of those connections through Sweetgrass and out to South Greeley. So this plat kind of shows some context of how that all lays out. What we're doing with the fire station lot at the corner of the park does not preclude some connection, either through the proposed lot 2 over to Artesian or in some other fashion through the neighborhood of RC. Really, as Mr. Matthews noted, this just tries to kind of pin down that location that had been fire's preferred location, and it will be on that extension of Sweetgrass Drive. The plan for the Sweetgrass development, which you can kind of see on this map, would be by the middle of next year to extend Sweetgrass Drive down to this location and then across Sirocco and back up into the 4Z neighborhood, which was Sweetgrass 5th filing. So, you know, we're making sure that we're making the connections that need to be made and extending infrastructure, you know, as possible, I guess, with the market forces being where they are. So I think the points are valid, but we're not eliminating a connection in terms of any physical barriers. It's mostly just following our conversations with traffic, engineering, the utilities companies, and the city parks and greenway department. That being platted as a right of way at this time wasn't something had need or interest in. And so really all we're doing with this plat is to establish that site for the fire station. That doesn't preclude future connections in some fashion. They're just not being defined in the way they were previously permitted documents. And then just as kind of a brief FYI, part of how all this came about is that we're working on sort of an overhaul of the land use map, looking at what has occurred since 2018 when the PUD was established, both in terms of what's actually ended up going in versus what was planned, and then some of these logical connections and things that have the school district also requested a different site than they had back in the early teens of 2017, 2018. So they've got a new site and we'll be coming forward to you guys in January with a major overhaul of the PUD land use map in terms of sliding things around and showing what's actually transpired and how things have developed. That'll be tied to a few sort of cleanup items in the actual PUD text and hopefully some streamlining as we've talked to staff about. So that's kind of what brought all this about is trying to get that station established where it was most desirable and most beneficial to citizens. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions you might have.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Seaver.
just Mr. Palmer's memory.
All right.
How wide is Sweetgrass? Is that a fairly major road through the subdivision?
It, I believe, is a minor collector, and it is built to kind of a rural standard to facilitate drainage. So there's not any curb and gutter on it. It's a, I wish I could remember. I think it's a 36-foot, 40-foot pavement top. So it's an asphalt road with ditches on either side that are conveying drainage through the development.
Parking.
There is no parking on Sweetgrass Road. It is only for collecting vehicles in and out.
I feel better. Thank you.
Any questions or further questions, I should say, for the committee for Mr. Palmer?
One more, I'm sorry.
No, you're,
Any
Go ahead.
concern with staff recommendations, 1 or 2?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. We don't have any concern with staff conditions. I actually just received an email a few minutes ago from the engineer on the project, civil engineer. I'd asked them to define exactly where they want those drainage easements. We had initially written that as a blanket drainage, ingress, egress, and utility easement. Staff just wanted to see those really delineated more clearly, rather than being a blanket easement on all three. So I've got that defined. We'll get that back to staff so that that comment can go away. I would also note on Sweetgrass Drive that the pedestrian circulation is an attached greenway style sidewalk. So there are pedestrian connections through all of Sweetgrass, but there won't be any people walking along that road because it's offset by 20 to 50 feet.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any further public comment? Any hands raised? Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the preliminary plat with staff recommendation 1 or 2.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve, including staff conditions 1 and 2. And a second. Any further questions or comments from the committee? And hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation for next Tuesday's city council meeting will be for approval. My understanding is that there has been a request for an additional item today.
Mr.
Chair?
Oh, can I read that?
Yeah, go ahead, section.
Memorandum of understanding regarding a request for impact assistance funds from the state of Wyoming Industrial Siting Council, South Cheyenne Solar Project, Laramie County, and the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Mr. Chair, Stephanie Boster, Cheyenne City Attorney. What's before the Public Services Committee today is an MOU between the city and the county regarding impact assistance funds. And this is related to the South Cheyenne Solar Project. I would direct you, it's basically our standard MOU, but it outlines how the impact assistance funds are distributed. They go through the county to the city. Exhibit A outlines how much the county is requesting from the Industrial Siting Commission related to the South Cheyenne Solar Farm and how much the city is requesting. The city is asking for $86,681.20. And for Councilman Laybourne's benefit, I emailed him a copy of the exhibits, which the city of Cheyenne is filing today with the Industrial Siting Commission in support of that $86,000. The city took a somewhat conservative approach because this South Cheyenne Solar Farm is 10 miles away from the city of Cheyenne. They're not going to be using our roads, our police, or our fire directly. So we had to figure out a way that we could justify this request. So unlike the Belvar Industrial Siting Commission case, we received nothing in that case. We believe we will be directly impacted from this solar farm, but we wanted to quantify exactly how. So the exhibit in front of you is how we've made that quantification. City Treasurer Robin Mockman ran the figures for us, and we have affidavits filed by the city treasurer, the chief of police, the fire department, and the municipal court judge, which outlines what they believe their impact will be. And with that, I am open to questions.
Thank you. Any questions? And like I said, this is my understanding, Attorney Boster, is that this is time sensitive. That's why it was requested to be put on the agenda today.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. Yes, the reason why it's on this agenda is we received the final draft of the MOU from the county late last week. We didn't think it was appropriate to put it on Finance Committee because there wasn't enough time to finalize it with our office. So we thought we'd bring it before this body today. We need a signature by the mayor before the January 5th and 6th hearing. They require a signed MOU between the county and the city. So this is that. So what we're doing is seeking the council's approval for the mayor to sign this MOU. Commissioner Lovett has already signed it.
Thank you. I just wanted to throw that caveat in. Sure. For the group.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
a couple of maybe statements, some questions. My understanding was the city and the county initiated to submitted this together using similar formula. Somewhere that went crosswise. Can you explain that?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Councilman Seagrave, I think that's a great question. We've spent a lot of time trying to drill down on that number. The original number for the city of Cheyenne was $411,000. That was based on not our general fund, but all of our funds and a use of 182 people. We couldn't support that number at all. We couldn't get to 411, no matter how we tried. So what we did is took all the funds, separated 6 big penny and just use our general funds. And we use the actual number of people that at any given time would be impacting the city from this project, which is 92.5. The county took a broader approach because this project's in the county, so it's going to impact them directly. So however they reach their cost of service is really up to them. But what we can support is in this exhibit. And that's why it went differently. Our demand was 411,000 based on that original number. And you can see the county's now requesting 405, but they were looking at like 360, if my memory is correct. So the way it's kind of morphed is that the city could support $411,000 impact to the general fund.
Mr. Chair. Go ahead. My concern is city's going now with this plan, the county's going to go in with this plan. The county's plan is very simple. It's their budget divided by the number of residents times the number of people coming here. I mean, that's pretty easy to figure out. We're going in with how many pages? And we're going to have to explain the difference rather than putting in united with the same formula. I think we're risking both of us getting turned down rather than going in united with the same formula.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could respond, the county's approach was the approach that the city used for the Belvoir wind farm, and we received no money at all. So we risk not receiving any money at all. We can support what the county's doing because they are directly impacted. We risk not receiving any funding because the Industrial Siting Commission has to approve this. I would also mention that we spent 2 days watching Casper's process. There was a much larger solar farm in Casper, it's called the Dino Solar, and the cities and towns and county paraded all of their fire chiefs and their police officials before the Industrial Siting Commission, and they got beat up badly.
They still got $1 million.
They got 21% of what they requested. Casper requested 5 million and they got 1.2 million. And our approach is actually a broader approach. This is not the big project that's going to impact the city before the Industrial Siting Commission. The big project is going to be the gold mine. So we're establishing credibility by seeking a conservative amount with this approach rather than and waiting for that bigger impact, which truly will be the gold mine. So I think the approach coming into that hearing is for Commissioner Lovett to present his case, which I believe is supportable, and then for us to present our supporting the campus approach. So I think it makes sense that Commissioner Lovett would want both of us to use the same philosophy coming into that presentation, but it seems like our diverse approaches support both the impact to the counties and then separately the one to the city. I think we can still unite with them before the hearing and support both approaches, but I think this protects the city's actual impact based on the solar project and is supportable.
Mr. Chair, one follow-up question is, where is this solar farm trying to visualize where it is from South Greeley Highway and Chalkcliff Road?
Mr. Chairman, through you, my understanding is right along, right off of South Greeley Highway, right on the line between Idaho and Wyoming.
So at the city boundary being Chalkcliff Road, we're actually going to be closer to the project than anybody else.
Mr. Chairman, through you, what they look at with the Industrial Siting Commission is impact to fire police, and which will be unfortunately county and state, because this is a state highway, and fire will be served by the district. We might assist in both of those, but it won't have a direct impact on our fire and police department. And that's got the most credibility by the industrial center. So we had to think about, well, these folks are gonna be staying in our hotels for 10 months. What does the impact look like there? And potentially they could get picked up for crimes, DUIs. They're staying in our hotels, they could end up in our municipal court, and perhaps EMS and fire would be responding. That's our impact. I think counties is so much broader, because it technically is in the county, and it's off a state highway.
Very few in the county. There. I can see the impact being greater. But that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Attorney Boster on this proposed MOU? Any further public comment? Three hands raised. Well, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the,
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Okay. Just to continue the process, I'll second it, but I'm not in favor.
I appreciate you keeping it in the hopper. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments from the committee regarding this proposed MOU? Being and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
well, that would stays on consent.
It wouldn't be on consent anyways,
Because
because
it
it
can't
was,
fight.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the recommendation will be for, is it approval?
Yep.
Approval of this proposed MOU at the next city council meeting. And with that, we have no other business in front of this group today, so we are adjourned. Merry Christmas, everybody.